For many of you know, I have a concentration in supporting commercial real estate and construction here in North Texas. And as a result, I've, over the years, got to know some very interesting individuals and characters. There's a lot of interesting characters in construction in North Texas if you're not involved with it. And some of these people I just really like to admire and love to hear their stories. And this gentleman I've got to know a couple of years ago, and he truly has a very dynamic story in respects to construction, has lived a really dynamic life, has lots of ups and downs, which he's actually put in his most recent book, which we're going to talk about, and also has some pretty deep roots to this state. So it is without further ado, I would introduce you, my friend and guest, Mr. Victor Bredding. Victor, how are you, sir?
Oh, Brian, man, I'm good. I appreciate being on the show with you, sir.
No, it's a pleasure, Victor. Like, I said, you and I have known each other for a while, but you had, with your book coming out, I thought I'd love to have authors come out and talk about their stories, because I think, I'm a big reader myself, and I think there's a lot to be gained by reading other people's lives and stories and perspectives, and not only they're, like we were talking offline, not only the victories, but sometimes the defeats and what we can learn from those defeats. So appreciate you coming on, Victor. It's me looking forward to this conversation for a while.
Yes, sir. Me too.
So, Victor, before we start, you're kind of roughly my age. Maybe you'll get this reference, but if we were playing a modified game of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, where in the world is Victor Bredding today? So.
Yeah, so he's in the big city of Alney, Texas. So
Texas. Where exactly is that, sir?
We're about 2 hours kind of northwest of DFW, and then we're 45 minutes south of Wichita Falls. So we're about an hour from the Oklahoma border. So let's just call it kind of that north central part of the state. Awesome.
And Victor, you and I, so getting your background, you actually have some, in your family, have some pretty deep roots to this state, because I'm the other generation of my family, at least I'm the only one born from Texas, and I live here. And when I go to parties or events here in Dallas, and as you know, everybody from someplace else, they say, "Oh, you're the guy from Houston, Dallas." But Victor, I think your family's got a little more deeper roots when it comes to the state of Texas. Is that right?
We're a little deep. I'm actually an 8th generation Texan, and we were one of the original 300 settlers that Stephen F. Austin gave land grants to when we were just a republic.
So you are pretty much, as we don't have royalty in this country, but when it comes to Texas, you're pretty much at the closest thing we got then. So that's amazing.
I forgot my crown, or my tiara. Maybe it'd be a tiara now. I don't know.
So where exactly in Texas did you grow up, Victor?
So I was born in San Angelo. Lived there till I was about 10, and then my mom got transferred to she's managed a Kentucky Fried Chicken ever since I was probably about 4 years old.
Wow.
So she got transferred to Galveston, so I spent my junior high years there, and then went to Copper's Cove, where I spent my high school years.
Okay. And Copper's Cove, you probably did a lot of, like my kids, football, basketball, that kind of stuff. What'd you do?
Did love the sports. My mom, kind of not being raised without a dad, my mom grounded me in several things. Sports was one of them. She felt like I needed to be a part of a team environment and to, learn what it meant to be part of a team. So she grounded me in my sports.
So you graduate from high school, Coppers, and what happened next? What was the next first step as sort of coming out of the high school and going on to the big world? So
went to University of Texas and ended up hurting my neck, losing my scholarship. So that kind of started out where after you ended up not, giving a ending up with a 1.6 GPA, UT decided they didn't want me anymore.
Yeah. So what year was that when this all happened? Your freshman year, or were you
78? Yeah, it's my freshman year. Yes, sir.
Geez. That's a good point. So then, obviously, you must have been a pretty good athlete. You're thinking about playing for UT in the big stage. That obviously could probably, for like a lot of guys, must have been a big sort of whammy to what your thoughts and your plans were, right?
Yeah, I never expected I was ever going to, make it to the pros or anything like that. But that was just part of my identity. It's, you stick yourself into a lot of things, that maybe you don't have. And, not having that dad, that was just one of the things that I put my mind and my effort into it that, kind of grounded me, honestly, and probably kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So, you made it a couple of times, Victor. Maybe we'll want to bring this later in the story, but what happened to your father?
So Dad really wasn't a part of my life. They divorced when I was 10. We moved to Galveston, and then he died when I was 16. But just wasn't a part of my life. And it's true. The only memories I really remember of my dad is sitting in a recliner with either a Falstaff or a Schlitz beer with a unfiltered Salem cigarette, with the ashtray running over. I mean, that is the only memory, because my dad just wasn't a part of my life. My mom was.
Okay. So UT doesn't go the way you want to. What happens next?
So there's where the story starts taking a twist and gets kind of funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. So, I come home, and my little brother and sister are 8 and 10 years younger than me, so my mom's trying to support them, being a single parent. And I'm sitting on the couch for about a couple of weeks, and, I kind of look up, and here comes my suitcase kind of being wheeled down the hall. Oh, okay. I don't know. Mom's maybe going to wash my clothes. I don't know. So the next thing she says, "Hey, can I have your car keys?" Oh, well, maybe she needs some gas. So the next thing I know, she goes, "Hey, can I meet you outside?" So I walk outside. She hands me my car keys, $20, and said, "Tell me where you land." I said, "Well, what?" She goes, you got a little brother and little sister that I'm responsible for, and I'm not responsible for you anymore. So go figure it out. So that's where Victor's construction career starts.
Okay.
I grabbed a buddy of mine that needed to have a job during the summertime to pay for his school. Mm-hmm. So we ended up down at Bay City on Brandon Root's project, that nuclear power plant. And I was there for about 7 days. And I remember the hiring manager came out and said, "Son, you can't stay here." And I said, "Sir, I don't have a choice." I said, "I'm out of gas. I'm down to bread and water. And the only way you can get rid of me is to hire me." So come Monday, he hired me, and there's the start of my construction career.
Well, that's talking about, getting into right into the thick of things, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was literally the water boy, because I was there between midnight and 2:00 in the morning, loading up ice chests, bringing water to 10,000 people on that job site.
Wow. That's amazing. So what was the actual, it was a power plant, nuclear power plant?
Yeah, it's a nuclear power plant, South Texas project.
Okay. And so from that little stint, what was your next sort of stint within the world of construction? So,
well, I got, fortunate, get right place, right time. But within 6 weeks, I was a foreman, basically running the crew. And for the 4 years I was there, ended up moving up into a labor general superintendent slot over 6 different crews. Then kind of, you wake up and you're probably 21 that point in time, maybe 22, and you go, labor's really not a craft. So Victor, what are you going to do? So superintendent that left came in from Abasco, which eventually took over part of the project, and he became the concrete and labor superintendent. So I was able to talk him into moving me over in the concrete side. So I was a prep foreman, doing all the sandblasting and that of the walls, and that needed to be, prepped for the next day. And from there, he moved me up into a vibration foreman, where we were vibrating all the walls, like we were on the outside shell of the retainment. And from there got into the finishing portion of it. So at least when I left after 4 years, I had a craft.
Okay. So, obviously your career has spanned a lot of different sort of opportunities. You mentioned Baker Concrete, TAS, Osborne, Reed, and now McCall. What's the biggest lessons you can think about where you are now in those early days? What would you say is sort of the biggest lessons from those early days and how they've shaped how you run things today?
It's probably, 20 years into it, I would say, because Dan Baker at the time was looking and saying, "Hey, if you're going to move up anymore, you're going to have to change." And, you're looking at yourself, because I felt like I was a successful superintendent, and I was a pretty successful PM. And, you're kind of like, well, what's wrong? Well, then he sends you up to Fales Management, and you go to the lumberjack school, as they would call it. And, you spend a week up there, and you have a bunch. It's probably 10 360 type batteries. And, they talk about the good things. Victor takes the hill, he won't take, no for an answer. And then you get the other side of it. Then you get this SOB, this little Hitler, he needs to shut his mouth and listen. And so at that point in time, you only have two choices. They're either a liar or you got to change. Mm-hmm. And I would say about 20 years into my career is where I started realizing that if I want to advance, if I want to get to some sort of executive or truly management position, I'm going to have to change. So that was my big turnaround.
So, I think that's a good point, because I think probably one of the hardest things to do in business is to manage other people. And it sounds like you kind of started you started from the ground up. You were being a water boy in the middle of the night in a nuclear power plant. Now you start becoming a foreman. And construction, we'll talk about that, but it's old school mentality, I think, to this day. But 30 years ago was really old school.
It's really old.
So,
oh yeah.
I mean, think about some of the time that's evolved. But I mean, because you have a lot of Type A personalities out there who are working. You probably a lot of macho. Suck it up. Don't complain about stuff. Over the years, I mean, your management style must have evolved and changed over the time. Would you have to agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm still an A-type plus, personality. I'm still going to take the hill, get out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
But I realize, and I've kind of adapted my own little thing. It's tens and ones. God gave you a 10,
Yep.
But if you're a 10 on one side, you're a 1 on the other. So me being able to take the hill, march, take pressure, blah 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 blah. Well, that made me a 1 on the other side. You're not empathetic. You don't feel much. So I remember the job. It was on a Turner job. And I was trying to change because Dan said you need to change. Okay, so Victor's trying to change. Well, I tried to pull the 10 down to a 5 and a 1 up to a 5 because I thought that's meant balance.
Yeah.
I got 8 up. Turner ate me up because I didn't have my God-given talents. So then I quickly learned if I can take the 1 to a 3, that doesn't mean I've changed what I'm naturally good at, but at least the perception is being there is Victor's not little Hitler. And that's where I've adapted in life is you have to bring the 1s up to a 2 or 3 and maybe a 4, but God gave you a 10 and you need to cherish that and don't change it. That's what made you who you are.
Amen. So, obviously with your career has expanded over, you've done a lot of big projects, you've done work for different firms. What's the hardest part of scaling operations? Because there's always you think about maybe a guy in a truck or you have a 5-person crew. Then over time, you're working with, hundreds of employees in large projects, and scaling is an issue in the sense that because at some point, you want to do, you have this mentality of you want to do it all yourself and take the hill, but you got to realize you can't do it all yourself. Right. I mean, what is the challenges as far as that you see or perceive that, when you're trying to scale an operation?
Well, the first that people honestly forget about is cash flow.
Yep.
Especially being a subcontractor because you're laying out cash for 45 to 60 days before you ever get a dime. So, cash flow becomes one of the first things. If you're going to stay in business for a long time, you better start thinking about your cash flow.
Yeah.
Second part of, you can only control, so many things. I believe I can train 1 person pretty good, 2, 50% of the time, 3 gets really sketchy, and trying to train 4 at the same time, I'm just not going to do it. You're not given enough time.
Yeah.
So the same thing happens to your people. You get to a point in time, you can't control it. So you're now having to trust somebody else, and hopefully you've trained them or you've hired, the right person to be able to do it. So taking it from I'm in control to I'm out of control is something you really have to get your head wrapped around. And you also have to have some sort of a check and a balance in there to say, hey, I trust you, but I'm going to check and verify because you don't want, everything to go rampant. Your job goes down at the same time. So,
yeah. Amen. So anybody who's just joined us, I'm having a conversation with Victor Breddy. He is a longtime concrete and construction experience veteran here in North Texas, but also is the author of a book we're going to be talking about here shortly. If you have a question for Victor, please look at the bottom right-hand corner. You see a picture of me, and it next says add a comment. Type in your comment, and as long as you keep it clean enough for Victor, we'll bring it to his attention. So, so Victor, what is, in your current role, you're director of concrete operations in McCall. What's a typical week look like for you right now?
The years that I put in, my time of specifically, running and managing a job and being responsible for the bottom right-hand corner, is kind of gone. To me, I'm here to educate, help, train, teach, be there. That's kind of more my role is a support staff to be able to support the needs basically of an individual project or an individual person. So that's hopefully what I'm contributing, that, when I decide to hang my hat up or my spurs, since we are from Texas, I'm hopefully contributed to somebody somewhere somehow.
Amen. Amen. So before we get into the book, Victor, I want to talk a little bit about the ranch. So obviously you're a very big hunter, and most guys in Texas in construction love to hunt. So tell me about the concept of the ranch, because it's expanded from just you having a ranch. You've really sort of grown this operation to be a little more than that, correct?
Yeah, and it was just supposed to kind of be about retirement. You know,
Mhm.
my wife had retired. I actually, retired at one point in time, and it was just going to be about the kids and retirement. And we're, like you said, we're hunters, so we're always going to outdoor shows. And we were in a small outdoor show in Wichita Falls, and my daughter ran up to me. She had a couple flyers in her hands, and she goes, "Dad, you got to go talk to these folks." Okay, so let's go talk to them. So one was a guy named Gordon Melton, which is a 20-year founder of Hunting with Soldiers.
Okay.
The other one was Casey Allen, state director of Cross Trail Outfitters, which is a faith-based outdoor program. So those two totally changed my life, and it totally changed what the ranch is. We've donated 64 hunts in the past 3 years to those groups, to terminally ill kids, to Purple Hearts. So it went from this is a retirement to now it's about giving. The revenue that I bring in is helping support the giving that we do.
Awesome. So Victor, real quick, so maybe just visualize, kind of explain, what does the ranch sort of look like? What does it got there?
So we're in 5 different parts. Two of the ranches we own. There's another one directly back behind me that's high fence, a neighbor of mine. We hunt his property.
Okay.
The bison's on 600 acres, which is down the road about 15 minutes, and then we've got 300 plus whitetail on another facility.
Oh, wow.
So we've got 5 different high fence ranches basically that we're hunting on. 2 of them we own. We've got 20 different species of animals. We're growing our whitetail on the property, our axis and our fallow. The sheep we kind of bring in. We've got scimitar oryx. We've got a stag herd on the second ranch. We've got a black buck herd on the second ranch. We've got ibex. We got markhor. We've got a little variety of everything right now.
Cool. So Victor, circle back for a second, because you mentioned growing up, you didn't have much of a father figure, or your father wasn't around. But that's why a lot of people maybe learn to hunt. So how did you get into hunting?
My uncle. I was about 13, I think, whenever he picked me up and said, "Hey, we're gonna go out hunting." And yeah, it was a little open sight 30-30 sitting on a tree stand basically that had nothing around it other than a 2x4 on a couple of tree limbs. So that's where you learn to hunt.
Fantastic. And so over the years, I mean, you've, like a lot of guys, but you've really, I would say, you really got into hunting. And to the point I'm looking at your bio as far as won some world records respects to hunting. So can you explain maybe the evolution of your hunting expertise from when you started when you were 13 years old to where you are now?
Yeah, and I've always loved to be in the outdoors. I think that's part of it, right? Part of being a hunter is the respect and conservation that we're in charge of, for God's creation. And to the same point in time, to just get out in the stars and watch the campfire. So, as you raise kids, that, your money's to go other places. So hunting kind of went off to the side, and boys started getting a little older, and then we were starting to do a traditional teal hunt, or we'd all go dove hunting together. So it was kind of the small stuff. And then whenever the boys got older and my daughter started leaving, we got involved with Safari Club International, started going to a lot of their banquets and that kind of led to all of the overseas. Like we just came back, my wife and I, from Africa, where I green darted my rhino, and my wife harvested some of the animals that she didn't have. So it just led to some bigger and broader things. And, my wife and I have been fortunate enough to go to 5 different continents and harvest a bunch of animals and get the adventure of being there, not just hunting, just to be able to be and see all the, new what's around you.
All right. So Victor, you made a comment there, so I got to ask you. So, pardon my ignorance, what does green darting a rhino mean?
You tranquilize them to the part in time that they're not completely out, that you can come stand by them and hope they don't roll on you.
Okay.
And get a picture with them.
Makes sense. But the rhino's not killed. You're just tranquilized.
No. And that was a huge part of conservation, because this is I put a couple of posts out on LinkedIn and even on my Facebook page about people talk about, the endangerment and the rhinos and all this. But what they don't talk about is the outfitter and the land that it takes to take care of those animals, and the dollars it takes to take care of those animals. Those people that actually are taking care of the rhinos spend a tremendous amount of money. So me being able to dart them and to not harvest that animal, I'm giving that money back to him to be able to keep those rhinos alive and surviving.
That's a very good point. I mean, I will circle back about that. There is an actual cost to this conservation, and yes, they want to get your money for free, but sometimes there's an incentive to at least take a photo with a rhino that hopefully doesn't roll over on you.
I'm telling you, I was seriously thinking if this rolls over, I'm done. Because you're not going to get him up because he's tranquilized.
No, no, exactly. So yeah, obviously, Victor, with regard to set your stage of where you are, but so let's talk about the actual book. So the book you wrote is called The Man That I Would Become. So what was the genesis or the thought that you decided? Because I think a lot of us have maybe the idea of a book in us, but whether it be fiction or nonfiction, but what is it made you decide to come like from you to write a story about your life and then to actually write it?
So it really was more of information to my grandkids and their kids and their kids. Because, my mom passed away about 4 years ago. And, like you said, we're an 8th generation Texan. And I felt like I lost some of the heredity. We might, she might have told me who Uncle Charlie was when I was 4 years old. That doesn't mean I remember. And if you think about it, when's the last time you went to a family reunion, right? It was my grandparents that drugged me to a family reunion. So it was kind of to one, let my grandkids understand what it takes to persevere in the world. So I was basically raised in a faith-based school till I was 6 years old. Pardon me, 6th grade, said that wrong. So the foundation was there, but you drift, right? You go through life and you go left, you go right, and you try to figure out what straight is. So part of it is for them to see my journey, to see the mistakes that I made in my journey, to see that you had to persevere through the journey, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel as long as you believe. So those are some things that I wanted to leave. And as I started getting the book, and other authors were trying to help me, because English is not my favorite thing. So writing a book is like, this is an oxymoron for Victor. I mean, it really is, right? So I'm writing this book, and as I started, going through it, people were pointing out different things, men's health, right? Everybody talks about the 22 suicides basically, a day for our service members. What they don't talk about is the 50 suicides in construction. So it started making me open my eyes to a lot more things, and maybe I can have a platform that can help somebody or make them aware, or, talk, because let's face it, we don't talk. So if men doesn't talk, you're not going to get it out. We're not going to solve our problem. So it just kind of became a bigger piece of hopefully what I can leave, when I leave this world.
So to me, you and I were talking offline, Victor, when we talk about, people, we learn from not only people's success, but we also learn about people's failures. I think the failures can be another person can be motivation to understand that maybe someone else has gone through these problems, or maybe gives you some inspiration to walk through and grind through the issue. So to that point, looking from the background on your story and talking about the book, you mentioned about a couple of things, and I'll let you explain upon them as far as whether it be business partner betrayal and failed marriages. Do you want to expand on any of that as far as what it is that maybe someone else can learn from that?
Yeah. If you think about it, again, looking backwards, so failed marriages has to do when you're the man of the house and you watch your mom work 60, 70 hours a week and you don't watch her cry, you get tough, right? I mean, you have to. I have a job to do, and that's what I have to do, right? So I didn't have that emotional connection, right? I never could give anybody my heart at the end of the day, because there was nothing to give. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't trying. It just wasn't nothing to give. So when you're sitting there writing your own memoir and you're trying to get it to other folks, you only have two choices. You either lie or you're honest. Yeah. So you had to confront yourself on a lot of things. I said, Victor, maybe most of this problem with your relationship was you. You couldn't give, your wife things that maybe, she needed to have. So that's where some of this transition comes from, of the man I would become, because I have a wife now that has molded me and shaped me and believed in me and helped me get to where I'm at today, where I can feel something, right? Yeah. Because you could cut my neck off and it wasn't going to cry. It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. So men need to understand that we can be masculine. We can take care of our family. We can take the hill. But you got to have that feeling in there to be able to take care of your family and tell them you love them and give them hugs and really be able to see that. So that's the transition for me on what I've become, is the person today, because I am not what I was 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago whatsoever.
Yeah, Victor, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that, and you made allusion to, I'm trying to connect the dots here, but I think it's part of a larger issue regarding what I would explain as far as the old school mentality of construction. And by that, I'd like to say, I think, 30, 40 years ago, walk it off, yes, it's tough, grind through it, don't complain. That's what a man doesn't do. And as a result, I think, and I could talk to other people, and with high rates of alcoholism, divorce, because for these jobs, especially your traveling superintendent, very taxing on a family, in drug dependency, and then to your point, suicide. Because I think part of this whole issue or culture that's been there forever, and I think we're starting to see some cracks, or at least some say reform, or at least some daylight, in the sense that it's okay to have emotions, and it's okay to ask for help. Because I think too many problems, like to your point, Victor, is like, well, we just got to suck it up and not complain, because that's what a man does. But we all carry these burdens, and if we don't let them out successfully, then we use drugs or alcohol or other means to cope with it.
No, absolutely. Think about it when you're a kid, right? And it wasn't any malice or any pretense with your parents, but think about when you fell down and you fell off your bike the first time and you scraped your knee. Get up, suck it up, buttercup, right? I mean, that's what we were taught. So from a very early age, we were taught, Victor, you don't show emotions, Victor. You get up and keep going. And we do, right? We keep going. But to the detriment of Victor, the 10s and the 1s we talked about, it all, you're connecting your dots, it all connects. The 10 is, I was a warrior, I could handle it. Let's go, but the 1 is I couldn't feel. There was nothing there to feel with. So it's hard to be a servitude leader if you can't feel or have empathy, because you don't want to listen and you don't care. And again, I don't think it's that men have a problem, but men have to understand, if you're going to be well-rounded just doesn't mean you're the toughest guy in a bar fight. Yeah. It has to mean that you're taking care of your family, but you have that empathy and that feeling to be able to be well-rounded, so you could be a good servitude leader and help them.
Amen. I think thanks for saying that. I think it's very well needed to be heard and said. And it's one thing for me to say, but I think it has a lot more gravitas for someone like you to say, who's got the battle scars to prove it, for lack of a better term. So
it's only the shovel on the back of the head that I had when I was younger. It affected me just a little.
Yeah. Understood. And if you can talk about it, maybe you got to withhold the names, but you make reference, like we made earlier, about the business partner betrayal. Is that a topic we can cover, or do you feel comfortable talking about it?
Yeah, I'm going to not give names. But,
don't give names, but maybe at least overall, if you can.
Yeah, so I'll, and I know this theory, right? Two things I know. I know that in construction, we have a lot of risk for a low reward, right? 3 and 5% basically when you're putting millions out there. It's not exactly a great investment, right?
Yeah.
So I know that. Voided it. Okay. Thought maybe here's an opportunity. Here's the next thing I know. I know that in a partnership, and I look at it as a California gold rush, right? Me and my partner were going, we struck it rich. I've got the gold. I'm in the back. I'm carrying all the weight. He's got the guns. It's in the front. Only 2 things happen in that. He's either going to defend me and we're going to get to the end and we're going to be rich, or he's going to turn around and shoot me and take the gold. Yeah. So partnerships are extremely tough to find the guy that's going to, number one, have the same mentality as you do, and you can trust them. And unfortunately, I got with a couple of partners that just didn't turn out the way it was. So I'm just kind of glad I was able to get out with my skin and my teeth at the same time. So,
well, you bring up a good point, Victor, because I think, and let me point this way, because I worked a little bit of construction, enough to be dangerous. At least I had preconceived notions going in, and I found out was wrong. But to that point, my job and role is, I work with clients to help them understand, not the insurance and the risk. The risk comes from many different facets, whether cash flow, you sign a contract where your insurance doesn't line up with this. You get gaps in coverages, and that's a lot of times, unfortunately, can happen after the fact. But I think one of the big things that this industry, and especially maybe because that's a lot of type A's, and then maybe some of these individuals want to go start their own firm, still type A, but they don't necessarily stop and think about the worst case, or they stop and think about, okay, it's not all sunny and roses. Yeah, I've got this relationship. I can go get the contract and I've got a crew, but they don't stop to think about the implications of, do I have the right contract in place? Is my partner and I, do we both have good financial sound, balance sheets, whatever? I do find that there is, I God love my clients who are, risk, take on risk, and they're entrepreneurs. But it seems like in this industry, they're a little more like jump first. I'll talk about it later. I'll find out later. I mean, how would you agree or disagree with that?
No, I do. And you have to have that. I'm gonna make it work to do what we do. I mean, you really do. You have to know it's not going to happen, but I'm going to make it happen. I mean, it's an oxymoron that's going on in both directions. But I do believe, like you're talking about, it was later on, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years, in my career when I started understanding, because I had to start doing contracts. When I started understanding contracts, I started understanding the risk and the holes that were in, because my insurance didn't cover the risks that I was signing up for.
Yeah.
As well as, like you said, the indemnities, they've changed through time. It used to be just for, somebody getting hurt or getting killed. Now I'm going to indemnify you for everything, right? So I do believe if you're going to be an owner and you're really thinking about jumping in on this high risk, low reward business, you need to cover all the risks that you can, right? Because one of the things I tell the guys all the time, before you ever make a decision, I need you to do a risk analysis. If you have not done your risk analysis first, you can't make a decision. This is not about money, because you will never cover risk with money, because you don't have enough money in the bank. So I think what you're saying is right on. And anybody, whether you got your own business or not, it's risk versus reward, and you better make sure you're covering your risk first.
Amen to that. So if you're joining us late, I'm having a conversation with Mr. Victor Breding, longtime veteran of the construction industry here in North Texas, and rancher, and now author of the book, The Man That I Would Become. If you have a question for Victor, you can look at the right-hand corner of the screen. You see a picture next to me. It says add a comment. Please type in your comment, and please keep it clean. But Victor's got a thick skin. Maybe we can bring it to him. We'll see. Please send us your questions. So, Victor, kind of circle back for a second. We talk about you grew up without a father, and obviously, like not having a father around can be a big impact on people's development. That being the case, you mentioned your father, and I think your grandfather now. How did that, having the lack of a father around, how did that shape the kind of leader and the kind of father that you wanted to be?
Well, you always have one or two choices, I think, whenever you become a parent, and that is, I'm going to be like my parent, or I'm not going to be like my parent, right? Yeah. You feel comfortable or you don't, and I never had one to be an example. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect, right? Yeah. Father figures in my life, honestly, were my coaches. They're the ones that drove me and, held me accountable. And, if I got in trouble, I'd get my spanks from them. Then I'd go to the principal, and then I'd go home to my mom, So it was kind of my coaches that all I know that was my manly figure, because my uncle, I told you, he took me hunting when he's early. Well, he got passed away in a car accident. So I didn't really have that. So I didn't know what to expect, right? I just knew that I still believed in respect, and I'm going to earn your respect. That I still believe in hard work. I still believe in perseverance. I still believe in not getting up, right? I still say we're from Texas, right? So it's cowboy up. You get bucked off, dust your damn pants off, get back on. So I had that portion of it, but I definitely probably lacked more of that feeling side. I think I probably raised my kids a little the same way, hey, you're crying, stop crying. You're a man, you got things to do. So if I could probably do it all over again, I would probably definitely look at the feelings that I have today and try to steal a little more of that, in my sons, and my daughter.
Yeah. And maybe that kind of does a nice segue. And we talked about earlier as far as the evolution of this industry, where I think hopefully is occurring. But obviously, the millennials and the Gen Z is a different type of person than, the boomers and the Gen Xers. How do you see, as your position, when you're, executive, as far as when you have the younger generation, what kind of management approach do you need to take, or have you had to evolve over the years versus like I said, when you first started off in school?
Well, it's definitely different. I joked about the shovel on the back of my head, but I'll be honest with you, in my first 4 years, I didn't know what my name was. I thought it was, blank, 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 blank. Yeah. So yeah, it's different. Now we don't say that, we can't do that. We need to, so I still believe that construction, especially as a subcontractor, is you have to be a doer. I mean, we just don't sit around and orchestrate, and again, nothing against the general contractor, because I work for one now. Yeah. But, general contractor's an orchestrator, right? They're risk adverse. They're going to pass risk down to you. So we have to do it. That's the end of the game. So I would say that at this second in time, that you do have to manage people different. I do understand that.
Yeah.
But I still would expect whatever generation that you're in to understand that we still have to do things. We can't sit around. The thing that's going to get anybody in trouble in what we do is to say, I emailed them, I called them, and I talked to them. You're missing the fourth part of that is I verified it and made sure that it happened.
Yeah.
So you still have to be a doer. So yes, please don't take it personal. I'm not going to cut you. I'm not going to, berate you. But you have to understand when I say, or your boss says, we need to get this done by Friday, they mean we have to get this done by Friday. Now, it's your job to raise your hand on Wednesday to say, sir, I don't understand, so let me help you. Yeah. Right? So I still would expect that whatever generation you're in to have enough common sense to say, I'm in trouble, raise your hand, let me help you. Right. And then leaders, you've got to understand that you do have 4 different personalities basically in your work group right now. And you need to figure out what motivates each person.
So you made a comment there about verify, which I wanted to circle back to comment earlier, because when I sort of come to believe, and I think you maybe believe, especially in Texas, especially for a paper GC, I mean, you're basically, as a general contractor in Texas, you're performing risk management. Mm-hmm. I mean, because you're not, unless you're even if you're doing self-performance, but you remove the self-performing component, a lot of this is, to your point, scheduling, logistics, verifying that this is going to be done. And if not going to be done, what does it take to get it done? Because that's what I think it was like a project manager is looking holistically at the entire scope of the project and trying to understand not all the things that only could go wrong within the fence line of your construction site, but what's the things that might be coming from the outside the fence line that can impact your project.
Well, it's all just what you said, right? Am I verifying? Okay, whatever it is. So take your electrical panels. Okay, well maybe that's 1 year out, right? Yeah. Your condensers, your heat exchangers, whatever it is, it's whatever system you've got. Some of that stuff's 12 to 18 months down the road. So are you verifying? Are you just going to sit there and say I wrote them a contract? Or are you going to put that contract now basically into the schedule, and then you're going to look at that schedule every month as it comes to this particular item and make that phone call? Hey, are we on schedule? Are we still good? So you have got to follow up at everything. And yes, the GC manages the schedule, because at the end of the day, right, their fee is going to either be enhanced or going to be taken away because they didn't make a schedule, because they based their general conditions on that schedule. So yes, I think you have to be involved in every aspect of what you do, and you have to not just trust, you have to trust but verify.
Amen. So just kind of getting towards the end here, but so let's maybe we'll focus a little more on the ranch, Victor. So as this expanded, I mean, obviously you're doing a full-time construction job, you also run the ranch. So, but what is the overall arching hope for the ranch in the short term and the long term that you have for it?
So I tell my kids, the legacy I want to leave is the giving in the last portion of my life, right? The first 50 years in construction, you've made it. Now I want to give back, because of what I was blessed enough to be able to have today. So the legacy is what I'm trying to teach them. So here's what I told them, short and sweet. If you don't understand how we're operating this ranch and that the donations and what we do to give back, if you don't understand that as I start getting old to a point in time, I can't take care of it, I'm just going to sell it.
Yeah.
Right. So I want them to know that this is extremely important to me, to be able to feel like that when I leave this earth, there's something that I've donated to instead of just taking.
Yeah. Amen. So, Victor, obviously the point with the book is your testimonial and something you leave behind for your kids, your grandkids. But you stop and think about your career and, from where you started to where the industry and where it is now, and just you as a person. What advice would you have for, say, with someone who's come out of high school or right out of college, got their degree in construction management? If someone's looking to maybe get a career in this, what piece of advice or couple things would you say is make sure you're dealing with this?
Well, one, I've appreciated being in construction. I love to build. The lodge and everything you're at right now, my sons and I built. The only thing we didn't do was the HVAC because I'm not smart enough to do that.
That's pretty complicated. Yeah.
It's a little, I would dampener what? So I love this industry. We are one of the only industries that we touch almost every single hat, whether it's healthcare or finance, or the HR. I mean, we touch all these different hats. We solve thousands of problems basically a day. We go from Schedule A to Triple Z or whatever it is by the end. There's constant battles and challenges we're in. And I love that I do something different every day. Right. I don't build the same job every day. I'm not doing the same thing every day. And that is so exciting. Yeah. And for me, I would just love people to understand I've made a really good career for not having a degree. I've made a really good career for only a couple of reasons. Number one, I care. Number two, I've got the tenacity to try to follow through with something is done. Mm-hmm. And I have a work ethic. That's really all it takes for us to do things in a little common sense. I'm sorry, common sense is not common nowadays, so I have to throw that in there. Used to be common, but not anymore. So if you got those four things, you can do whatever you want to in construction. Because if you think about what's happening to us, right, and again, don't want to get into a different subject, but you've got people you got these kids that are coming out of COVID, and I'm sorry, they just got passed through school. There wasn't like they made it, they got passed on. They're going to have to understand and realize pretty quick that they need to figure out what that's going to mean to them. And if you just got a little drive and a little effort, there's more than one person that will see that effort, and he'll help you and he'll support you and help pick you up for that next promotion.
Amen. On a somewhat related note, we talk about the next generation in the future. And I'd be curious, Victor, if you could share whether currently at Macau you guys are using this or where you think this is going to go. How do you envision the construction industry adopting artificial intelligence as respects to the future developing or delivering projects?
We started developing it a year ago.
Okay.
I use it all of the time now because, like you said, grammar and English is not exactly my favorite thing. So if I'm typing, I'm really a pissed off email, I run it to him, and they're so nice to me. So AI is the future. It just is, right? Whether it is being able to verify the linked activities in a schedule, whether it's verifying basically in your contracts what typical boilerplate items are, cost control. I mean, it's going to evolve. Now you have to be there, right? You're still the double check. You're still the person that's at the keyboard. Yeah. But I believe that anybody that is not in the AI bandwagon right now is going to get left behind.
Yeah, and that's my take on it as well, because there was, people say it's like it's going to take all these jobs. I'm not sure it's going to take a lot of jobs. I just think if it's going to make you hard to be employable if you don't understand artificial intelligence. And like back in my day, coming out of college, it was, Excel came along. Oh, it's going to take all these accounting jobs. No, it just made us do more. But in order to do that job, you had to understand how to use Excel. And I use artificial AI almost on a daily basis as well. A lot of it's not necessarily, outside of work. I do it within work, but also outside of work as far as, what I'm doing here with my social media and my podcast and everything like that. But I use it on a regular basis. And I think you're right. It's like either learn to use it or get run over by it. So. Yep.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I'll give you just a short example. It's like on Canva. I never knew what Canva was. Well, all of a sudden, when you got a ranch and you got to advertise, you got to book. Oh, I guess I got to figure out how to do these wonderful things. Well, even in Canva now, there's an AI, and I just did it this weekend. Nice. Somebody wanted a media kit for some podcast or whatever that I didn't have. Okay. I went into Canva. I told the AI what I was looking for. They brought it up, 5 different sheets. I filled in the blank, changed some pictures. Life was done. I'd have taken me weeks to get that done.
No, exactly. No, yeah. And I think I think like old dogs like me can use these type of things for like our social media posts and our podcasts and our book writing, whatever. It's a tool that it's like you say, you can't just ask it to write something and copy and paste it and throw it out there. It's going to look like you didn't write it. But like I tell people, it's easier to edit something than it is to create something.
I think that's amen to that.
Yeah.
Oh, hell well.
So we're getting short on time, but if you just join us, I'm having a conversation with Victor Bretting. He is the author of the book, The Man That I Would Become. If you have a question for him, look in the bottom right-hand corner. He said, add a comment. Go go ahead and type in the question and bring to Victor's attention. And don't be shy, people. I know you're watching, but ask a question. So, Victor, towards the end here. So now that you're, I think I know this answer, but when you're not being a construction executive and when you're not running your ranch, what are you doing?
I used to just have to keep myself busy, right? Like the ranch kind of started whenever my wife said, stop building in our backyard. There's no more grass, right? So, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, it's pretty simple. You're on a farm or on a ranch, you always got something to do. So there's constantly something. So that's one thing that keeps me busy. I can tell you the thing that I'm evolving into is I love to do things, but I'm getting tired of a schedule. 50 years of being driven by a deadline or a milestone, I'm kind of getting tired. I just want to do it at my leisure. So I'd say kind of sitting back and relaxing becomes a little more now than what it used to be, instead of just a deadline and things that I've got to get done. And the other part, I'm learning to stop and smell the roses, to sit outside with my wife and look at the stars. We just came back off a vacation that I just enjoyed, being with her and knowing that there's one more day that I had on this earth. And I appreciate, the ability of being able to wake up every single day and being on top of the dirt, not the bottom. So
yeah, awesome. So you mentioned the past, you made reference to, so you sound you've done a fair bit of traveling over your years. So if somebody's watching this, I'll give you two answer questions. First, if you're a hunter and you're looking for a great locale that's outside of Texas, what 2-3 locations would you recommend to somebody?
So I love Africa, right? 14 times. So many variety of animals. You never know what's around the corner. That's one. I would say
any place specific in Africa, like Kenya or
so we've been to Namibia twice.
Okay.
We've been to Republic of South Africa like 10 times. Been to Mozambique, been to Zimbabwe.
Okay.
I tell everybody, work your way up. Right, start out with plains game. Work yourself up small. Don't say I want to shoot Black Death. I want to shoot this buffalo. Just work yourself up. Have a short deal on your plains game and work yourself up. I love New Zealand. There's hardly any predators, no flies, no gnats. New Zealand was wonderful. And I liked Australia when we were up in the outback. I would say those are probably my 3 favorite that I've been to.
Very good. All right. So then for people who aren't hunters, what are your top 3 spots that you recommend someone go to?
Well, a river cruise. We used to be an ocean cruiser, and we just got back from the Danube. So being able to, here's an example, 5,000 people, who knows how many staff on an ocean boat, 182 of us and 50 staff. They know your name by the second day.
Wow. So where'd the cruise start and where did it end?
So we started in Budapest, went through Vienna, and ended up down in Riesenberg, down in Germany.
Wow. And
then we went the other way the first time. We went from Amsterdam back up into Riesenberg. So we've been from where the Danube hooks up into the Rhine. And that is the most wonderful thing, sitting on a balcony, cruising down. We just love it. We're hoping to go to Egypt one of these days.
That sounds phenomenal. I haven't done a cruise. I know I want to do that river cruise, and other people have said the exact same thing. I haven't had the fortune been to Budapest, but I've been to Vienna, which I love. It seems like a great opportunity. Okay, so river cruise, but if not river cruise, what else?
Here's my favorite, and my wife didn't do it with me. I went over for a week into Germany, and a buddy of mine rented a car, and we just went from, castle to church, castle, church, kind of all the way through. Well, I want to take my wife back there because you just can't see it all. I love being able just to go through Germany and being able to hit the castles and all that. The landscaping is just gorgeous. The cathedrals are just awesome. And just looking in something that's 1,000 years old when we think 250 is old.
Exactly. No, it's time is different over there. That's for sure. Their history is the comedian Eddie Izzard, like Europe. That's where all the history comes from. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Victor, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing. This has been a great conversation, and I wish you success. Continue with the ranch and the book, and thanks for sharing. And obviously the book's available on Amazon, I assume, in all function ways.
Yes, sir. Yes, awesome. Sir, it is.
Victor, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it, sir.
You bet.